Haing Ngor was a doctor, and he was engaged to be married when his country, Cambodia, was torn apart by war. He lost everything, including his wife and his unborn child. Years later, he resettled in the United States as a refugee. That's when he was discovered by Hollywood. Ngor shot to fame for his part in the movie The Killing Fields. It came out in 1984, and it reveals the horrors of Cambodia's genocidal Khmer Rouge regime. They had seized control of Cambodia in 1975, thanks in part to U.S. overreach in the Vietnam War. Ngor played New York Times reporter Dith Pran, and he won an Oscar. 12 years later, in 1996, Ngor was killed. He was gunned down outside his apartment in the Chinatown district of Los Angeles. Authorities convicted 3 members of an Asian gang called the Oriental Lazy Boys, and they said they killed Ngor in a mugging gone wrong. But no one who actually knew Ngor or Cambodia really buys that story. Ngor was actually living in 2 worlds. He kept acting in Hollywood movies, and at the same time, he was bouncing back and forth to Cambodia. He wanted to use his Killing Fields fame to do humanitarian work.
I'll never forget him saying to me, when he left, he said, "Susan, one day I will come back and help my people."
He never played like the movie star. He was just Haing. He wanted to do more work. He wanted to make some more money and, support the stuff that he was trying to do back home.
Cambodia at the time was the Wild West, and Ngor also tried his hand at business.
Wherever he goes, there always a gun under his seat.
I'm sorry, say again, he had a gun?
Under his seat, a car seat.
But he was entirely out of his depth. He also had a real abrasive streak, and those might have been his undoing. He was afraid for his life?
Yes.
My name is Patricia Noonan. I started my journalism career in Cambodia between 1992 and 1996. Those are the same years that Ngor was going back and forth, but he and I never actually met. So why do you think, there's people like me, there's people like you, and now it's 30 years later and Cambodia is still so near and dear to us. My friends and I joke that Cambodia is like a virus. Once it's in your bloodstream, you'll never really be cured.
You're always in love with your first war. But there was something more than that. It was more than just the conflict.
For me, Cambodia was a coming of age. It was where I felt like I was becoming the person I was meant to be. And it was also utterly surreal. Cambodia in the 1990s was like time traveling back to the Vietnam War.
With UNTAC there as well, with the use of the helicopters and things, that just kind of boosted the Vietnam mythology.
The Khmer Rouge were an aberration of history. They were more than just a communist rebellion, an insurgency, or an independence movement. We hear about those all the time, and I've covered my share of them. They were genocidal extremists. They were obsessed with trying to build a so-called pure communist society. It was a revolution based on delusion and horrific amounts of violence.
The fact that although it was wonderfully exotic and back in time, it was also a global story, because the world was in there. And because, the Khmer Rouge were like Jungian archetypes, they wrote themselves.
To me, The Killing Fields is one of the greatest journalism movies ever made. It's about Dith Pran, who was an assistant to the New York Times correspondent, Sidney Schanberg. Together, they covered the 1975 fall of Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, to the Khmer Rouge. The film is about friendship and guilt. Western journalists were evacuated from the country while their Cambodian colleagues got left behind to face the Khmer Rouge hellscape. It's about Dith Pran's nearly 4-year story of survival that was portrayed by Ngor.
If it had just been a film about Cambodians doing horrible things to Cambodians, I don't think it would have had the impact that it had. It was the mixture of the two, which was beautifully fused so that an international audience could identify with it in many different ways.
Like I said, Ngor also survived the Khmer Rouge, but barely. He was tortured. Like everyone, he was starving. His pregnant wife died in his arms. It left him with deep emotional scars and what I assume was the PTSD from which he never really recovered. I'm sympathetic. I've had to deal with PTSD, and so have many of my friends. Not everyone gets better, and some end up dying young. Ngor was actually a deeply flawed human being, but I still admire him. He knew he had to embody the role of Dith Pran to bring to light the crimes against humanity inflicted on Cambodia by the Khmer Rouge. It was the 1980s and the world was much, much bigger, and not enough people knew what had gone on at the time. Ngor stepped up, and the killing fields changed history. It was a movie, but it helped bring about peace talks that launched a $2 billion United Nations peacekeeping mission to Cambodia. That's when I showed up there.
For the average Cambodian, it was a miracle. They could not believe it. They could not believe there is 20,000 blue helmets in the country to protect and to monitor a ceasefire.
When Los Angeles authorities tried their suspects, Ngor was a saint, a tragic hero murdered by remorseless gangbangers. Others said the Khmer Rouge ordered his assassination, igniting a conspiracy theory that still lingers to this day. So would you say that he was addicted to sex or addicted to risk-taking? Neither story is true.
I think more to risk and to sort of outsmarting others.
The man the police say shot the gun that killed Ngor is named Jason Chan. He's represented by the Innocence Center, which is a California legal nonprofit. This is his lawyer.
I think cases are much more challenging when there isn't a lot of evidence, and it just becomes this, like, who tells a better story when you go to court. And I think that's definitely true in this one.
Ngor was a controversial guy, and he had enemies.
But when he came into Phnom Penh, I saw the people he was hanging around with. They all looked like they were loaded, and we were saying, they were hearing, hey, he's just way over his head. And he made good money, but he got into investments and he borrowed money. And we heard that the Chinese mafia knocked him off.
Like I said, Cambodia is like a virus. If Ngor was killed over his activities there, I'm honestly one of the few who could figure it out. For more than a year, I've been working with the Innocence Center to try to do exactly that. If you were with me for the first season of Who Killed Haing Ngor, this season's going to be much more investigative. I'm going to eliminate some suspects one by one, and we're going to take a closer look at least one individual whose actions demand closer scrutiny, maybe even a confrontation. At the time I'm voicing this remains an open investigation. So if you have any information you think might be valuable for me, please reach out at whokilledhaingnor@gmail.com.
When contemplating the idea of how he died and who killed him, the net has to be thrown awfully broadly.
Join me for Who Killed Haing Ngor Season 2, wherever you get your podcasts.